on the artificial island of Itagami, located in the Pacific Ocean, a place where supernatural creatures live peacefully alongside humans, exists an entity that many organizations fear, Akatsuki Kaju. Rumors spread about the presence of the fourth progenitor, an immortal vampire believed to be unaffiliated with any faction, having no clear bloodline, and with no one powerful enough to control him. They call him a living legend, a nightmare capable of burying an entire nation if left unchecked. Although these rumors remain unconfirmed, the Lion King organization, an agency specializing in handling supernatural threats, doesn't take this danger lightly. They immediately dispatch Yukina Himuragi, a talented sword shaman of the organization, to Itagami to secretly monitor Akatsuki Kaju, whom they suspect is the embodiment of the fourth progenitor. Yukina's mission is clear: if the target exhibits any harmful behavior, she must immediately eliminate the threat. While Yukina begins her mission, Kaju tries to live like a normal high school student. However, during a casual walk around the school grounds, he accidentally sees Yukina tying her shoelaces. In that brief moment, she appears in Kaju's eyes as an entity with demonic features, awakening his vampiric instincts and triggering a characteristic physiological reaction. Though he immediately turns away, that reaction doesn't go unnoticed. After returning to class, Kaju realizes he has no motivation to continue studying, especially when his close friend Asagi Aba is absent, making the atmosphere feel emptier. Another female friend comes to chat briefly before quickly leaving Kaju alone with untouched assignments. Even his wallet is now empty, leaving him uncertain about how to manage tomorrow's lunch. On his way home, Kaju suddenly feels strange eyes following him. He enters a nearby supermarket, pretending to shop while checking his surroundings. At the exit, his gaze meets Yukina Himuragi, the new student at Seikai Academy whom he had seen that morning. As soon as she spots Kaju, she immediately assumes a defensive stance, reacting as if preparing to face a creature that needs to be eliminated. Kaju maintains his composure, pretending not to understand what's happening, skillfully hiding his identity. After Yukina leaves the store, two other students approach her with inappropriate attitudes. Kaju, standing not far away, silently monitors the situation. He quickly notices the special bracelet on Yukina's wrist, an item typically used to seal power. When the two begin to cross boundaries, Yukina coldly retaliates with an electric current, causing one of them to reveal his half-human, half-beast form, a being that belongs to a species requiring strict management. The other one uses magic to create chaotic energy, triggering the security system on Itagami Island to issue an alert signal. To prevent escalation, he summons a spirit beast using Kent's magic, a battle horse capable of causing widespread damage. Yukina immediately draws Schneewalzer, her custom-made spear, ready for combat. The battle erupts violently amidst thick smoke and dense magic. With just one strike, she neutralizes the summoned creature and closes in on the controller with the intention of ending the threat immediately. Kaju suddenly rushes in between, stopping Yukina from taking action. Although she clearly expresses her displeasure, after hearing what Kaju has to say, she temporarily withdraws her weapon and leaves the area. That evening, while walking near the residential area, Kaju accidentally finds a wallet. When checking the documents inside, he realizes it belongs to Yukina. The image of her silver hair and cold eyes suddenly flashes in his mind, shaking his thoughts. Especially when thinking of her, the fourth bloodline inside him begins to surge, followed by the familiar reaction of a species not belonging to the human world. Itagami, the artificial island in the Pacific Ocean, is where non-human creatures legally reside under a separate system of laws. Seikai Academy was established to train young generations to adapt to this unique environment. Although Akatsuki Kaju tries to live like a normal teenager, he cannot hide his true nature, the embodiment of the fourth progenitor, a creature known as the strongest vampire in history. While lost in thought, Yukina Himuragi suddenly appears and asks Kaju to return the wallet she dropped. However, he doesn't immediately comply, wanting to know why she always follows him. Although Yukina warns him with a gesture reaching behind her back, the situation becomes awkward when her hungry stomach betrays her seriousness. Kaju returns the wallet, while suggesting an exchange for a meal at a hamburger restaurant near the school. While eating, Yukina reveals she comes from the Forest of the Lost, a place connected to the Lion King organization, a secret force specializing in dealing with magical disasters and global supernatural threats. Under the title of Sword Shaman, she was sent to monitor Kaju, suspecting he possesses power beyond control limits. According to Yukina's assessment, Kaju might be concealing a dangerous plot. Meanwhile, he still cannot explain why he's being closely monitored, nor understand why people always associate him with the progenitor title. When Yukina mentions the first time he revealed his abilities, Kaju tries to recall those memories, but immediately experiences a severe pain in his temples, making all memories of that period unclear. Although she has become somewhat more open, Yukina still maintains her distance, declaring herself ready to act if Kaju truly becomes a threat. Without responding, he silently leaves, saying he will go to the library to learn more. Yukina doesn't return, as her mission requires her to always stay beside the subject under surveillance, regardless of circumstances. The bell rings across the school grounds. Kaju suddenly turns back, his eyes filled with something difficult to express. He walks slowly toward Yukina, then unexpectedly kneels down as if secretly entrusting something to her. Yukina stands still, her expression mixed with hesitation and confusion. In that brief moment, her silhouette gradually dissolves in the brilliant evening light, leaving in Kaju's heart a silence that cannot be put into words. On a quiet afternoon at the headquarters of the Lion King organization, where elite warriors are trained in the world of magic, Himragi Yukina is urgently summoned to receive a new mission. Upon arrival, she receives a strange photograph. It contains the portrait of a high school boy with a calm demeanor, cold eyes that harbor something mysterious, named Akatsuki Kaju, identified as the fourth progenitor, the strongest vampire in legend. Yukina is surprised because his appearance and aura completely match the type of person she is unconsciously attracted to. Accompanying the mission is a special weapon Sekiro, a level 7 spear specifically crafted to eliminate powerful magical creatures. Under the title of Sword Shaman, Yukina is assigned to monitor Kaju on Itagami Island. In case she discovers genuinely dangerous signs, she has the authority to act, including assassination if necessary. At that very moment, throughout Seikai Academy and the island city, there's a commotion about a magical creature chase occurring in a residential area. Rumors spread quickly, creating a tense atmosphere enveloping everything. Simultaneously, the semester exams are approaching their conclusion, keeping students busy, including Kaju, although he isn't particularly interested in studying. On a hot afternoon, just as Kaju enters the dormitory, he unexpectedly encounters Yukina. She has been waiting outside for a long time, waiting for the delivery staff to complete arranging her belongings in her new room. Notably, Yukina's new room is located right next to Kaju's apartment, a coincidence that makes him somewhat awkward. Inside, the room still looks sparse, evidence that she has just moved in and hasn't yet settled. In class, a prominent teacher named Minamiya Natsuki, outwardly an English teacher, but actually a high-level mage, approaches Kaju. She knows well about his true identity and doesn't hesitate to directly mention the recent blood spill incident at the shopping center, a phenomenon considered a sign of a high-level vampire's awakening. When Kaju appears to know nothing, she changes the subject, warning about the Lion King organization. Although not stating the reason clearly, Natsuki seems to dislike those from that organization and advises Kaju to keep his distance from Yukina, the representative of the opposing force. Ignoring the advice, Kaju Akatsuki still takes Yukina Himragi shopping. With her familiar serious expression, Yukina observes each device in the supermarket as if it were a potentially dangerous tool. Kaju can only remain silent at this rigid reaction. Clearly, Yukina is not yet accustomed to the everyday rhythm of life within the human community. On the way back, a strange glance passes over Yukina, momentarily tightening the atmosphere. Upon reaching the apartment complex, they meet Nagisa, Kaju's younger sister. After a brief greeting, Yukina is informed that she will be in the same class as Nagisa and receives an invitation to dinner at their home. In that warm space, Yukina feels awkward in the family atmosphere, while Kaju sinks into old memories of when he was a basketball star, a time when he held the MVP title, but then lost everything due to excessive pride. When the meal ends, Kaju leaves home to buy more supplies. Returning, he is surprised to see Yukina standing silently in the rain, her uniform soaked dark, making the image before him difficult to forget. Although understanding that her mission requires her to always be by his side, Kaju gently reminds her about the need to prepare better if she wishes to continue surveillance. As they continue walking, he starts a conversation to better understand Yukina, from her hometown to her interests. When passing a claw machine, she suddenly reacts strongly to the image of a teddy bear bearing the emblem of her old school. Seeing this, Kaju tries his luck, hoping to give her a small gift. At that moment, Minamiya Natsuki, the teacher who is also Yukina's supervisor, appears. Without time to think, Kaju grabs Yukina's hand and pulls her away from the area, that hasty action seeming to lay the first foundation for unpredictable situations between the two. In another development, when both approach an unstable area, Yukina immediately detects a Kens emitting fierce magical power ahead. Recognizing this as a high-level threat, she takes out Schneewalzer, ready for battle. Kaju intends to follow but is stopped, as he is not permitted to participate in missions classified under special control level. Yukina leaves a message about Nagisa, then without hesitation, plunges onto the train moving quickly through the city. Amidst the scenery of raging fires on both sides, Yukina approaches the hotspot. The summoned being appears clearly in the thick smoke akince with formidable energy. Beside it is an elderly mage, the direct controller, whose face exudes experience along with signs of depleted vitality after a fierce battle. The Kens attacks, summoning a giant arm aimed at destroying all obstacles before it. However, the strike doesn't hit its target, but only causes the train to shake violently, many cars tilting, creating a chaotic scene. Yukina quickly climbs up to observe, discovering that the summoned hand is being countered by an invisible force causing the Kents to suffer serious damage, falling and spitting blood. Immediately after, a third person appears. The killing intent emanating from cold eyes and a rigid face signals danger. Yukina approaches with the intention of mediating. However, the opponent has already drawn his blade and intends to finish off the wounded mage. Male is the newcomer. As he swings his blade down, Yukina rushes in to block it in the decisive moment. Male's eyes suddenly shift direction when he recognizes Schneewalzer, the spear symbolizing the power of the Lion King. Aware of the girl's true strength, he immediately closes in, launching a barrage of techniques, forcing Yukina to utilize all her skills to respond. She counters accurately, stabbing repeatedly into the opponent's body, but all efforts fail to make him falter. An unexpected development occurs when Taddy Male's assistant appears, creating two more giant arms, using them as living entities to attack Yukina. Just one hand is enough to make her stagger. When the second one comes, the situation becomes even more unfavorable. Amidst pressure from all sides, a thought suddenly appears in Yukina's mind. If she cannot return, what will happen to Kaju? Suddenly, a fierce blow from afar tears apart both summoned hands, followed by a powerful wave of vibration. From within the smoke, Kaju appears, his eyes glowing, clearly showing signs of awakening. Male temporarily halts his actions, clearly sensing the unusual magical power from the opponent. Memories of the fourth progenitor arise, making him begin to be wary. Not missing the opportunity, he actively rushes in, wanting to verify the true power of the one once regarded as a legend. The battle continues, with the balance gradually tilting toward Male. Kaju, despite his efforts to resist, still cannot turn the tide. However, at the critical moment, a stream of primordial energy from deep within his body erupts, breaking through all barriers. His appearance changes completely, power spreading, making the surrounding space seem to freeze. The real battle begins from that moment. Under the faint morning sunlight of the following day, the air at the explosion site from last night still carried the heavy scent of burning. Police had cordoned off the entire area, conducting an urgent investigation. The incident caused over 20,000 households to lose power, although 10,000 of them were quickly restored. The damage amounted to approximately 50 billion yen, a figure that would make anyone who heard it feel dizzy. All stemmed from the fierce battle between entities possessing powers far beyond human capabilities. In the moment when Yukina seriously considered reporting the incident, she set aside that intention when remembering how Kaju had risked danger to protect her. That action somewhat made her feel confused, so she chose to remain silent. To mitigate the consequences, they cited self-defense to justify their previous outburst. At the train station area, the explosion incident caused the railway to temporarily suspend operations, affecting many people's schedules. In a brief conversation between Yukina and Kaju, she mentioned that the lightning from last night was not commanded by Kaju. Although he inherited power from Shinso, his control over it remained imperfect, especially when faced with an entity embodying Ken as the manifestation of power that refuses to submit. Under normal conditions, Kaju could maintain stability of this power stream. However, once overwhelmed by another Kenaz entity, things easily spiraled out of control. The root cause perhaps stemmed from the fact that he was a vampire who still retained purity, never having taken anyone's blood. While the conversation between Kaju and Yukina was still ongoing, Gaju suddenly appeared. His sharp eyes quickly examined the peculiarity in Yukina, thereby issuing a warning that Kaju should be more careful at school. At that moment, Asagi came looking for Kaju to inquire about the night's incident, while also wondering about the girl who had stood by his side when it happened. Soon, rumors spread throughout the school when a new female student with a striking appearance transferred in. Attention immediately focused on Kaju, with numerous male students expressing interest and wanting to know more about that girl. The commotion continued until teacher Natsuki entered the classroom, calling Kaju to the office after lunch. Accompanying her was that very new female student. At the teacher's office, another student unexpectedly approached, trying to probe the relationship between Kaju and Asagi. He only affirmed that they were nothing more than close friends. At that time, Asagi stood nearby, silently tearing up Kaju's report. Natsuki continued presenting evidence about the previous explosion, including photographs of victims. Some were in comas, while the suspected demon hunters had not yet been captured. Since Kaju might be chosen as the next target, she requested that he absolutely not leave home at night. Before leaving, Natsuki returned to Yukina, the lost teddy bear. After the chaos, Yukina began to synthesize the strange details surrounding the girl they had encountered. From her sharp judgment, she determined that the opponent was not an ordinary human, but a product of advanced biotechnology. Clues about the third person who appeared at the same time Kensei and Kenzu were attacked were also placed under Yukina's suspicion. Although she had investigated many areas around Itagami Island, intuition led Yukina to a more remote location, a place few people paid attention to. Kaju immediately contacted Asagi to track down classified data. Thanks to her superior skills in cybersecurity, Asagi quickly discovered the coordinates of a research facility hiding behind a barrier seemingly related to the artificial entity. Yukina decided to check it out. Although initially not wanting Kaju to come along, she accepted on the condition that if the situation became complicated, he must immediately withdraw. Both headed towards an abandoned structure deep in a forgotten area. After breaking through the deceptive outer barrier, the real door appeared, opening the way into the central area. Inside was a vast laboratory. Here, numerous artificial entities were being kept in hibernation, or imprisoned, a discovery that made Yukina even more certain that the incident harbored many more dangerous elements than they had thought. From the opposite side, a girl identical to the one they had met last night suddenly appeared, along with a warning about an impending danger. She revealed that Itagami Island would face the risk of being completely submerged, as the organization behind this facility had achieved a power beyond imagination, a power related to the eternal treasure. The cloned girl was a direct product of that process, when Kensei used Kenzu as a host to implant destructive energy into her body. However, since the artificial body couldn't endure for long, she was forced to absorb life force from defeated demons to extend her lifespan. The conversation quickly turned into a fierce argument between the two sides. Kaju, unable to maintain composure, stepped forward to express his anger. From the enemy side, someone connected to the organization appeared, but this time without concealing their purpose. They summoned an entity called Shoedi, a demon creature wielding enormous power. Yukina initially underestimated the opponent, attacking directly but was immediately countered. Despite using her spear skill to create pressure, she realized all her magic and attacks were being nullified. The truth revealed that the opponent was using a special ability called Resonance, skill the capability to nullify magic and penetrate all forms of defense. In an instant, Yukina was knocked away, unable to react in time to the falling axe. At that very moment, Kaju rushed in, using his body to shield her from all damage. Blood from the cut splashed out, forming a red pool on the cold ground. Afterward, he pulled out the axe and swept across with a fatal blow. Kaju's body collapsed, the wound so severe that his head was almost separated from his body. In Yukina's hands now, Kaju had only a lifeless head, a scene that deeply shocked her heart, while the dark forces prepared to continue their destructive journey. In Asagi's server, an urgent alert was issued when the system detected 2 intruders with power equal to an entire army approaching a critical area. At that time, Kaju woke up after the fierce battle. All wounds on his body gradually disappeared miraculously, blood also being restored to his body as if some invisible hand was manipulating life itself. Yukina and Kanon's faces clearly showed astonishment witnessing the recovery ability beyond imagination that Shinazuka, or Kaju Akatsuki, the 4th progenitor, possessed. Yukina Himuragi felt confused by Kaju's action of saving her. Since childhood, she had been abandoned by her parents, sold off, and then trained as an emotionless warrior, a living machine existing only to fight. To her, death was no longer frightening, but merely a peaceful ending. Because for a long time, she had always believed that if she disappeared, no one would be sad or mourn. When Kaju tried to stand up, his body lost balance, causing him to fall toward Yukina, creating an awkward situation. Though embarrassed, Kaju also admitted that he himself was strange, hoping Yukina wouldn't sacrifice her life for someone like him. While they were talking, a sudden tremor occurred. Kaju immediately pulled out his phone and received news that the Kido Gate, a strategic passage on Itagami Island, had just been attacked. Meanwhile, Asagi Aba was trapped amidst rubble, with raging fires surrounding her, alongside people with severe injuries. Despite the dangerous circumstances, she still answered Kaju's call, reporting the situation. Through Asagi's tense voice, Kaju learned that a mysterious old man behind this attack was accompanied by an artificial Kenju, something that left Asagi unable to hide her astonishment. Nevertheless, there was no time for questions. She immediately sent the location, accurately reporting the position of the two intruders. The area they were targeting was just a special steel block, the central connection point between the four main directions of the island. Kaju asked more about the treasure, the true objective of the raid, but Asagi informed him that information belonged to military secrets. Therefore, Yukina had to intervene to break through the firewall, although she felt uneasy about it. Despite Yukina's obstruction, Kaju said something that made her think, and she eventually agreed to let him drink her blood. It turned out that this action was a way to make the Kenju within Kaju accept unification with Shio, his hidden power, and Yukina knew well that he couldn't do this without being fully activated. Although Kaju didn't want to cross boundaries, Yukina's persuasion left him no other choice. At the same time, a third person appeared at the central core of the island. Kaju and Yukina quickly arrived, just in time to face the stranger. A heavy dialogue began, revolving around ancient matters, secrets buried in the history of this artificial island. The intruder declared he wanted to reclaim the foundation stone, something that was the root of life on the island. However, if it were removed, the lives of over 500,000 residents would be threatened. Yukina tried to persuade him to choose legal options to take back what belonged to him, rather than destroying everything. Nevertheless, the old man flatly refused and called Tatara into battle. Faced with the tense situation, Kaju jumped into the fighting ring, preparing to release tremendous energy from deep within his soul. The battle once again commenced, not just to protect Itagami Island, but also a battle of memory, honor, and especially survival. Amidst the fierce exchange, Himuragi Yukina suddenly rushed onto the battlefield, requesting to join the fight. She actively took on the task of confronting Astarte, while Kaju Akatsuki was entrusted with the important responsibility of stopping Magus Craft's actions, the mastermind behind this entire dark plan. As Yukina began to unleash powerful attacks, her opponent, someone with a strange identity, realized that Yukina's power was increasing significantly. Not wanting to be pushed into a disadvantage, he immediately activated a special battle armor, a weapon that had been prepared beforehand to confront those with extraordinary abilities. However, Yukina had no intention of backing down. She summoned Kenju, one of the special skills belonging to Seikai, quickly changing the situation. Her unexpected counterattack sent the opponent flying back. Just as Yukina was preparing to deliver the finishing blow, a violent collision erupted due to Tatiana's intervention, creating a series of strong shockwaves causing the entire server system to issue emergency warning signals. When Yukina realized her attacks couldn't penetrate the thick protective armor surrounding Astarte, she immediately reinforced her spear Schneewalzer, using all her strength to break through the defensive barrier. Kaju understood her action and quickly signaled for Kenju to attack in coordination. After the intense collision, Yukina's spear broke, but at the same time, Astarte also fell into a state of being completely overwhelmed. The remaining one Magus Craft couldn't maintain balance against the continuous wave of attacks. His defensive armor was destroyed, and he ultimately suffered a heavy defeat. Immediately after the battle, Kaju embraced Yukina, then suddenly jumped down to Astarte, using the ability of the fourth vampire to bite the neck of this artificial girl. He believed that if he gained control of the Kenju from the opponent, he could easily neutralize the threat. Yukina stood behind, clearly feeling a surge of anger. In her heart arose a feeling of betrayal, as Kaju's action far exceeded permissible boundaries. With the broken piece of her spear still in hand, she couldn't contain her anger and proceeded to give Kaju a beating. Himuragi understood that she had just gone through an important turning point. From here, she officially became one of those capable of blood letting to supply energy to the fourth vampire, marking a new phase in the relationship between them. Everything seemed to be pre-arranged by Vatler, who had been monitoring developments from behind the scenes. However, due to actions exceeding orders that damaged the specially issued weapon, Yukina was forced to leave her current position. As she prepared to withdraw, a package from the Lion King agency was unexpectedly delivered. Inside was the Schneewalzer spear, completely restored. This action was like an affirmation from the organization that they still wanted her to continue the mission of monitoring Akatsuki Kaju, a mission that had never ended. A strange creature was being hunted intensely across Itagami Island. When it seemed there was no escape, the individual suddenly activated a remote explosive device with the intention of creating chaos to flee. However, the plan was quickly foiled. The entire detonation system had been neutralized before it could take effect, and this person was unexpectedly stopped by someone who had just appeared, a petite yet dignified girl, Aba Natsuki. The opponent quickly recognized her as a mage, yet still recklessly charged to attack. That thoughtless action allowed Natsuki to easily subdue them using her ability to manipulate space, an advanced form of magic that only those with profound knowledge could perform. While the opponent tried to dodge and launch speed attacks, she still maintained the upper hand. When this creature was completely captured, Natsuki determined that they worked under Gadu, a dangerous underground force hiding on the island. Afterward, she handed the subject over to the security forces to conduct a broader investigation. In a completely different situation, Kaju Akatsuki entered the bathroom to call his mother for dinner, but discovered Yukina changing clothes inside. That misunderstanding earned him a devastating kick. Later, on the train to school, his sister Akatsuki Nagisa gently inquired about the morning situation. Yukina spoke up, taking the blame for carelessly allowing someone with strange behavior into her room. She appeared at the house to take body measurements in preparation for a sports event outfit. However, in reality, her class wasn't participating in the competition, but only attending as a cheering squad. Some male students in Yukina's class had actively suggested that she provide moral support for them, leaving her with no choice but to agree. Meanwhile, Nagisa was uncertain whether to cheer for her brother or not. Although feeling embarrassed, she finally decided to support Kaju on this occasion. Asagi Aba, a classmate, brought her sports racket today, ready to participate in the tournament. On the way to class, she asked Kaju which event he would choose. He replied that he would find the simplest discipline to easily pass through. At school, when Asagi looked at the list, she was shocked to discover she had been paired to compete with Kaju. Although somewhat confused, she couldn't change the situation. Kaju reassured himself that the discipline he was participating in probably wasn't too difficult. In another instance, Josuke, a member of the technical team, was suspected of illegal transportation of experimental items. In response to this suspicion, Matsuki appeared, declaring she had just subdued some individuals under Josuke's command. Just as the escort forces were about to arrest him, he revealed his true form as a demon. Natsuki quickly controlled the subject with spatial magic, then handed him over to Astarte for processing. She also summoned Kenju to enhance defense, knowing Astarte could control this type of entity. Checking the records, Natsuki discovered the opponent had connections to smuggling activities. While analyzing the situation through the monitoring system, she couldn't clearly predict Gadu's next purpose, the person behind many recent incidents. On a luxury yacht, Akatsuki Kaju, the fourth progenitor guardian, showed signs of confrontation with a new force. Back at the sports field, Yukina gradually understood why Asagi was angry about being forced to pair up for competition. After buying water, she considered leaving early, but fearing Asagi would get upset, she stayed until the end. In the classroom, just as Kaju was about to sit down, the chair suddenly tore apart, followed by a series of arrows shooting down from the ceiling. Noticing two beast spirits in the shape of lions, one bright gold, one silver-white appearing, he thought about calling his familiar, but fearing it would destroy the school, he decided against it. At that moment, Sayaka Kurosaka appeared just in time, throwing her spear to push back one of the two. She rushed in to completely eliminate the remaining beast spirit with a powerful thrust. Yukina then arrived, identifying magical traces near the area. Although she and Sayaka had provided support, Kaju still wasn't clear who had taken action. The incident didn't stop when two other students accidentally saw Yukina using magical weapons. She intended to erase their memories, but Kaju reassured her that her current appearance was no different from someone in costume, so there was nothing to worry about. Afterward, a messenger approached handing Kaju a letter bearing a special seal. Yukina recognized the symbol belonging to a major power, signaling something serious was about to happen. At that moment, Asagi caught sight of Yukina with the letter, causing her to misunderstand something she shouldn't have. The letter was sent from Veld Gador, the Lord of Dominion, a territory under the First Progenitor's authority, who holds 72 powerful familiars. As a pure-blooded vampire with direct lineage from the First, Gador possessed widespread influence in the supernatural world. On the way back afterward, Yukina and Kaju briefly discussed this lord and the possibilities that might occur if they had to face him. The letter contained a strange request. The invited guest must bring a lover to the party. This put Kaju in an awkward position, not knowing whom to choose. The image of Natsuki briefly flashed in his mind. However, Yukina didn't miss the opportunity to question him, causing Kaju to change his mind, choosing Yukina as his companion, for the reasonable explanation that she was tasked with monitoring him. As soon as they returned, the Lion King agency had sent a package, including custom-made attire for the upcoming event. Strange enough, the outfit was tailored based on Yukina's personal measurements, proving this organization possessed more information than normal. In the evening, Yukina and Kaju stood before the yacht prepared by the Dominion organization. While conversing, they were unaware that a mysterious girl was silently watching them from a close distance. Inside the yacht, when both entered and saw no one, they decided to go to the highest level to check. It was there that an ambush occurred. They were attacked by a masked person, forcing them to quickly switch to a state of high alert. Not long after, Veld Gador, the powerful Lord of Dominion, officially appeared and began introducing his identity and the true purpose behind that mysterious invitation. Immediately after Vatler completed his greeting, which was somewhat dramatic as usual, a series of sharp knives and forks suddenly flew toward Kaju, making the atmosphere in the room tense in an instant. Himragi Yukina reacted extremely quickly, recognizing that the culprit behind that attack was none other than Sarilyn, also known as Kurosaka Sayaka, an old friend who had fought alongside her in Lion King organization missions. Sayaka was delighted to see Yukina again after a long time. This time she came to Itagami Island not only to visit her friend, but also as a supervisor sent to represent Lord Aldiger. The invitation letter to Yukina and Kaju was also delivered by Vatler at her request. Yukina introduced Sayaka to Kaju, while Sayaka explained her mission revolved around combining dark magic with assassination skills, a deterrent type of supervision, both protective and ready to strike if the subject exceeded limits. Meanwhile, at her private residence, Eva Asagi called Motoki Yaes, expressing disappointment upon learning that Kaju was having secret meetings with Yukina without telling anyone. Yaes, half joking and half serious, said perhaps Yukina had done something to tame the fourth progenitor. Then Yaes encouraged Asagi to be bolder if she didn't want to miss her opportunity to others. The call ended when Asagi's computer suddenly displayed a strange code, which turned out to be a puzzle sent directly to her from an anonymous system. At Dimitri Vatler's residence, he casually shared about his connection with Aurora, the original sacred body linked to Akatsuki Kaju's power. With his inherent teasing character, he didn't hide his intention to test Kaju's reaction. But Yukina Himragi timely intervened before things got out of control. Although not directly interfering, Vatler detected traces of Yukina's blood remaining on Kaju, thereby showing interest. He issued a warning that if they truly had a blood connection, Yukina would become an opponent in the power game he always enjoyed. Yukina chose to evade, shifting focus to the reason they were invited to the island. Vatler mentioned Gadol Candagrona, a figure who had caused the massacre at the Grand Theater, resulting in hundreds of deaths. He had been part of the radical organization Black Death, which was thought to have been eliminated. However, according to Vatler, after the original leader was assassinated, some survivors hired Gadolcan to take over. Vatler was the one who carried out the previous assassination, but currently, the successor was operating on Itagami Island, with ambitions to break the Holy Treaty. Not wanting Kaju to risk himself, Vatler assigned Yukina the task of dealing with Gadolcan. He worried that if Kenju took action, it could cause unpredictable consequences for the overall situation. The next morning, Kaju found himself in an awkward situation when he woke up and saw Asagi Eva accidentally lying on top of him. In panic, he accidentally touched a sensitive area, causing both to tumble to the floor. At that moment, Yukina and Nagisa entered the room, witnessing a scene that created a profound misunderstanding. Yukina didn't speak, just silently left, while Asagi disappointedly went home thinking she had misjudged Kaju. No one knew that everything was within the monitoring range of Sayaka Kurosaka, a mage using a spirit beast to remotely monitor. Afterward, Kaju sought out Yukina to apologize, while admitting his fear of losing control if the bloodthirst erupted. He blamed himself for not being alert enough, hoping Yukina would understand the weakness inside him. On a morning on Itagami Island, Yukina approached Minamiya Natsuki to seek more information related to the target Gadolcan. Kaju accompanied her. While they were talking, Adi Natsuki's assistant brought tea, but only a portion was kept for the owner. Natsuki warned against approaching too quickly, because according to classified data, Gadolcan currently possessed an ancient artifact from the Holy Clan era, once documented as having the capability to destroy civilization. It came to the island through a smuggling network, accompanied by an incomplete instruction manual. All researchers who had tried to decode it had failed, and most were no longer free. Recent signals from the Eastern Dock area matched data about that ancient artifact. However, the real danger, according to Natsuki, wasn't Gadolcan but Vatler, an ancient vampire who had eliminated two S-class agents in the blink of an eye. If he suddenly changed his attitude, Yukina would not have the ability to resist without collaborating with Kaju. After the meeting, Yukina asked Kaju if he still needed to drink blood to control the Kenjus. His answer left Yukina speechless, not because he refused, but because the feeling of dependency made him ashamed. This made her both confused and angry. In an effort to find a solution to stabilize Kenju's power, Yukina proposed asking Asagi to search for the ancient artifact Nalak Verza, an item related to ancient magic. Upon hearing the name, Asagi showed clear interest and immediately agreed to investigate. In another area, Yaes Motoki secretly monitored all movements. When he discovered Yukina and Kaju entering the student council room where confidential data was stored, he turned on an eavesdropping device. At that time, Asagi quickly broke the security system's lock, creating conditions for Kaju to infiltrate the server. They discovered a spider-like biological model, likely the prototype for the weapon Gadelkand used. Just then, the sound of a door opening startled Asagi, who pulled Kaju to hide under the table. A teacher walked by, paused to observe, then left without detecting anything unusual. In that tense situation, Kaju's nosebleed suddenly dripped down due to the close proximity between them, a scene that inadvertently caught Sayaka's eye, who was secretly monitoring from afar. Afterward, they left the building, moving to the rooftop to continue their discussion. Kaju mentioned an ancient symbol sequence discovered in the system, opening a discussion revolving around ancient languages and undecoded seals. Confused by the previous night's events, Asagi found an excuse to leave. At that moment, Sayaka appeared from the rooftop. Without saying much, she attacked Kaju for discovering he had drunk Yukina's blood. Yukina immediately rushed in to stop her. The confrontation between the two became tense, causing Kaju to accidentally sustain injuries. The falling blood immediately activated the fourth progenitor's power, creating violent magical fluctuations across the rooftop. Asagi witnessed the chaotic energy spreading from afar. Meanwhile, a car with an unclear license plate parked near the academy. On the driver's seat, Asagi's photo was conspicuously placed, signaling that a dangerous person had just targeted her. In the upper hallway of Seikai Academy, Aba Asagi accidentally saw Sarasaki La Folia holding a sword emitting an unusual glow. La Folia's serious demeanor and vigilant eyes made Asagi suspicious. She slowly approached the person who had just appeared, intending to clarify the situation. But before she could speak, the energy flow from Akatsuki Kaju began to fluctuate violently. It seemed that La Folia's presence had stimulated a strange reaction inside the fourth progenitor's body. The demonic bloodline within Kaju began to surge uncontrollably, causing the space around the school to become chaotic. The energy pressure increased suddenly, creating shock waves spreading throughout the campus. La Folia, although the instigator, still tried to call for Kaju to stop, but it was clearly too late. Yukina Himuragi, sensing the chaos erupting, appeared with Sekuru, her holy spear in hand. She quickly intervened, creating a pulse to stabilize the energy flow that was beyond Kaju's control. Thanks to that shock, his consciousness gradually returned to normal. However, the incident didn't end there. Kaju began arguing fiercely with La Folia, the exchange making the atmosphere even more tense. Yukina didn't remain silent, but seriously asked what both were doing in a place that needed such strict protection. In her mind, she couldn't help but worry about her role, someone who had let the situation go too far. Akatsuki Nagisa ran up to the floor during the chaos, not understanding what was happening. Before her eyes was the image of Aba Asagi unconscious amid shattered hallways. Yukina immediately took her friend to the infirmary, where the doctor confirmed there were no serious injuries. Meanwhile, Nagisa accidentally encountered Adi La Folia's assistant in a maid outfit, making her curiously approach. After regaining consciousness, Asagi only vaguely remembered the silhouette of someone holding a blade appearing before she fainted. Yukina gently said it was an acquaintance, secretly guessing that La Folia had become jealous seeing Kaju beside Asagi. Unexpectedly, Asagi directly asked about the relationship between Yukina and the fourth. On the rooftop, Kaju and La Folia were punished by kneeling for causing trouble. They still argued incessantly before Kaju actively took responsibility. Although complaining about the supervision work, he didn't deny his trust in Yukina. The conversation shifted when La Folia presented a childhood photo of her with Yukina. As Kaju stepped closer, La Folia took a step back. An unexpected compliment made her blush in embarrassment. Suddenly, Adi appeared announcing that enemies were infiltrating from the gate. Before they could prepare, the demons had already flooded into the school. Nagisa fled in panic, encountered a stranger in the hallway causing her to scream loudly. Yukina was forced to knock Nagisa unconscious to prevent widespread panic. Gadelkand Agrona unexpectedly entered, followed by a stranger. Both approached Asagi, requesting her to perform something important. Adi immediately stood in front to provide defensive action. However, the other didn't hesitate, drawing a gun and shooting straight. The gunshot echoed up to the rooftop, causing Kaju and La Folia to immediately rush down. Due to residual magical influence, Kaju temporarily lost hearing in one ear. Upon arrival, he was stunned to see that Yukina and Asagi had been subdued and taken away. A long night of uncertainty began. At the infirmary, Kaju encountered severely wounded Adi, with blood soaking her sleeve. She had just regained consciousness after the intense conflict. At that time, Jerd, someone from the unit pursuing the attackers, secretly took a special pill hidden in his sleeve. After a few seconds, his body glowed, magical energy helping him float in mid-air. Kaju, Yukina, and Jerd were escorted onto a military helicopter, completely losing control. With no choice, Jerd swallowed all the remaining pills, creating an artificial clone through signals emitted from the device in his ear. As soon as the clone appeared, an unidentified force attacked directly, taking it down in an instant. Jerd was knocked off the aircraft, falling into the deep lake below. Yukina and some others remaining on the ship were still safe. Nagisa alone began falling into a state of disorder. Yukina revealed that Kaju's sister had previously undergone an intervention related to demon entities, leading to severe psychological trauma. When brought to the hideout, Gadalkand handed Asagi an ancient book containing information about Nalakuvra, an ancient god capable of destroying both the Fourth and the Shinu Kingdom. He wanted to activate this destructive power through an ancient command. On the retreat path, Lifolia thanked Sarasaki for saving Adi in time. However, the group was immediately blocked at the transit area. That was also the point they needed to reach. Kaju didn't hesitate, carrying La Folia and jumping across the ship's hull, approaching the safe base. As soon as they set foot inside, Natsuki Minamiya appeared just as a powerful explosion destroyed the storage compartment. After the explosion, Vatler emerged with his perpetual smile. It was all a trap, designed to lure Itagami Island's defense forces into his experiment, a place containing a new weapon beyond control. Immediately after, Nalakuvra was summoned. The ancient god, originally stored since ancient times, had now awakened, beginning to attack the defense team mercilessly. All defense systems became useless against its destructive power. Agrona at this time also received notification that the blood artifact and evolved combat form had begun firing. Yukina couldn't understand why Vatler, someone with overwhelming power, would agree to support Agrona and allow the immortal dragon to intervene. The only reason she could think of was that they were feeling too bored, and this was a war game to help them kill time. After Agrona withdrew, Nagisa seemed to fall into a state of unconsciousness, but before that, she appeared to become someone else. She left a message for Asagi, providing some directional suggestions, then fainted. The flame of destruction, the source of the ancient god's power, had now ignited. Vatler stood amidst the battle, throwing something down from above as if ordering the attack. He took on the responsibility of destroying Nalakuvra's control core. At that time, Kaju received a call from Yukina, confirming that Nalakuvra had begun penetrating deeper into the central network. Kenju Vatler's summoned spirit beast was called forth. Not only that, he also combined two Kenju forms to create a variant superior to before. Kaju, clearly aware of the threat before him, actively held Nalakuvra back while Yukina's group sought to neutralize the core. When Vatler expressed interest in joining the battle, Kaju immediately requested that he not intervene, as in this battle, he wanted to end it himself. Vatler agreed and ordered Kenju to destroy the strategic weapons transmission line, opening the way for a counterattack. Kaju Akatsuki advanced deep into the center of the battle, while Asagi Aba persisted in focusing on decoding ancient text to find a way to seal the ancient machine. Yukina Heimragi, without hesitation, began moving independently to provide support from outside. Meanwhile, Kaju tried to avoid a series of consecutive attacks from Nalakuvra, the awakening ancient god of destruction. A slip caused him to lose balance, but Sayaka Kurosaka had rushed in just in time, taking a terrible attack in his place. Not accepting that her friend would suffer any more damage, Sayaka erupted, unleashing her strongest technique, swinging her blade directly at Nalakuvra's leg. However, the ancient energy shield surrounding it prevented the cut from penetrating. The reactive force from the barrier pushed Sayaka flying backward. Kaju at that moment called forth Kenju, his spirit beast, and created an overwhelming move to save her from danger by a hair's breadth. Nevertheless, the collision between two such large energy sources pulled both into a deep pit beneath the ground. Fortunately, neither Kaju nor Sayaka encountered serious danger. Upon awakening, Sayaka unfortunately slipped once more, falling directly onto Kaju, making her extremely embarrassed as her wet body had accidentally pressed against him. To avoid misunderstanding and help her save face, Kaju immediately took off his outer jacket to cover Sayaka. Amid the damp space, water columns continuously shot up due to underground pressure. Nalakuvra continued to regenerate, crawling up from the ground at an extraordinary speed thanks to its self-healing ability. Meanwhile, Asagi had finally completed decoding the ancient character sequence, a piece of information playing a crucial role in disabling the control system of this ancient weapon. Yukina, by then, had infiltrated the central protection area of the base. She quickly subdued those standing guard and went deeper inside. The scene before her eyes left her astonished, a series of Nalakuvra machines in the activation phase, ready to be deployed outside. On the battlefield, Agrona Gadalkan clearly revealed his ambition to control the entire ancient army. He asserted that even Vatler didn't grasp the true scale of the plan. The ultimate goal was to erase Itagami, the land protected by the fourth progenitor. After transforming his shape, he attacked Yukina with great lethal pressure. Overwhelmed in the first exchange, Yukina was forced to retreat to retrieve Schneewalzer, then activated full power. The confrontation continued fiercely. Although Yukina wasn't completely dominant, she succeeded in cutting off one of the opponent's arms. Despite the injury, Agrona didn't falter but quickly used hostages as shields, then activated the system, gaining control over Nalakuvra. In the basement, Sayaka, having recovered from the fall, suddenly embraced Kaju, giving him blood for recovery. This action not only increased the Fourth's power, but also served as a commitment to accompany him. From afar, Kanon Kanes and Vatler witnessed the scene, with Vatler expressing satisfaction seeing Kaju beginning to mature. At that moment, a pillar of light shot straight into the sky, a signal indicating a new Kenju was being summoned. It was the Fourth's wrath in the form of a white divine war horse. Agrona gradually lost his position as he couldn't maintain control. In an effort to restore the situation, he connected directly with the core system. Natsuki Minamiya intervened just in time, teleporting Yukina away from the danger zone. Simultaneously, she ordered the evacuation of Sayaka and Asagi. The battle began to tilt toward the island's defense forces. As Yukina prepared to return to provide support, her phone rang. The caller was Asagi Aba. Through her worried voice, Asagi announced that the enemy had completed decoding Nalakuvra's control structure, pushing the situation into a high alert state. Sayaka, still watching from afar, couldn't help but wonder when she saw Yukina approaching Kaju as the Fourth's energy fluctuated violently. Nevertheless, Yukina continued advancing without hesitation. Above the central area, Kaju had summoned Kenju to fight against the destructive Nalakuvras. However, a strange energy flow from an unidentified direction knocked the spirit beast away, revealing the presence of a commanding entity, one capable of directing the entire army. Not letting Kaju fight alone, Yukina joined the battle. When passing by Sayaka, she suddenly noticed Kaju's jacket on her friend's shoulder. An indescribable feeling briefly passed through her. But before her eyes were low-level Nalakuvras closing in, giving her no time to think. Kaju continued to summon a second spirit beast, a battle lion form of Kenju, notable for its powerful close combat ability. Despite using full force, the spirit beast still couldn't penetrate the extremely hard armor of the lead entity. As the battle situation became deadlocked, Yukina received news from Asagi that a self-destruct command had been integrated into the system, only activatable when Nalakuvra's body was forced to restructure. The condition was to cause serious physical damage. Sayaka immediately transformed her short blade into a bow, channeling all her spiritual power into the arrow and shooting straight up. The barrier erupting from it paralyzed all the subordinate Nalakuvras. Kaju took advantage of that decisive moment to launch a finishing blow aimed directly at the commander. Just when the battle seemed to be tilting in their favor, Agrona Gadalkan, the mastermind behind the entire plan, suddenly appeared from the shadows and attacked Yukina. However, that deadly strike was blocked by Kaju's unexpected intervention. Not waiting for the opponent to recover, Yukina rushed forward, determined to end the battle. She threw a device containing a special audio recording into Nalakuvra's main control core, activating the self-destruct mechanism Asagi had previously installed. A chain reaction occurred. The entire control system was disrupted. The body of the queen froze into stone and quickly shattered. Other machines were also destroyed accordingly. As the dust settled, Yukina turned back to look at Sayaka with a serious gaze, asking about letting Kaju drink her blood. Sayaka gently admitted that in the dangerous situation, it was the only choice she could make to preserve both their lives. Elsewhere, Vatler, who always enjoyed observing the battlefield from afar, smiled in approval of the recent coordination. When withdrawing from the area, he opened a letter just delivered. It was a notification approving the new position. He had been assigned a high-level diplomatic power position on Itagami Island. As the new ambassador plenipotentiary, Vatler's upcoming time would certainly no longer be as boring as before. In a chaotic moment in the sky, a large airship suddenly burst into intense flames. The cause originated from a girl possessing power far beyond ordinary humans, who had just torn the gigantic machine apart amid the clouds. On the deck, a warrior carrying a sacred sword appeared as the last protector, ready to stop that destructive action at any cost. However, the confrontation between these two opposing forces didn't last long when a deformed entity suddenly appeared, calling the girl B2 a mysterious identification code containing many implications. It declared that one of the other airships was in a state of missing without clear cause. At that moment, as the girl glided past the person holding the sword, An unusual phenomenon appeared in the sky, a dim light zone clearly showing the silhouette of an entity called the Angel as Jahanko. That light left the warriors stunned, restless until the next day. After that battle, Kaju was called continuously throughout the night by Seiya, although she didn't provide any clear reason. Yukina, who was always allergic to hearing male voices through headphones, couldn't accept that type of telephone communication. This made her visibly upset, choosing to separate from the group to go alone, causing her classmates to notice her unusual fatigue and suspect she was dealing with personal relationship issues. Asagi also appeared at the same time, her face clearly showing lack of sleep. The simultaneous exhaustion from both girls caused increasing suspicion from those around them. After class, Asagi expressed her desire to meet Kaju privately at the end of the day. As promised, he arrived at the place she designated, where Asagi suddenly requested him to take off his outer jacket for her to use as drawing reference. During this time, Kaju suddenly remembered the image of a strange girl crying alone while looking at an old photograph, evoking an incomprehensible feeling mixed with obsession. Afterward, Asagi expressed disappointment, then silently left to return to the drama club. Upon returning, she brought many performance props, giving Kaju a suit with a request to change clothes. He felt quite strange wearing them alone, so Asagi also changed into her own costume, this time a maid uniform. The atmosphere became lighter when she began taking photos of him continuously, while Kaju also took the opportunity to capture that moment with his phone. However, amid seemingly harmless interaction, Asagi suddenly questioned Kaju about what he was hiding. In return, she proposed a deal. If he agreed to tell the truth, she would answer any question he asked. Finally, she arranged to meet him on Saturday evening to resolve that issue. That very night, Sayaka called again. This time, she announced that she was preparing to move to another city because an important figure had just arrived in Japan, and the mission to protect that person fell to her. Just after ending the conversation, Kaju caught sight of flames rising from an area in the city, signaling a new crisis about to occur. The next morning, Kaju began monitoring his sister Nagisa's movements with a worried expression, thinking she was hiding something unusual. However, that plan was quickly stopped by Yukina when she appeared with a serious face, clearly expressing the doubt in her heart. They then decided to follow Nagisa together to the rooftop area of the school. Upon arrival, they discovered the door locked from the inside, while simultaneously hearing some strange sounds that made them mistakenly think something was wrong. The misunderstanding angered Kaju, who immediately kicked the door open to check the situation. However, the scene behind the door was simply a small cat walking around, accidentally creating the strange sound earlier. Kaju turned to question Nagisa about the content of the letter she was hiding, thinking there was something important that needed clarification. It turned out it was just a list of club members from a fellow student Akatsuki who was trying to find someone to take care of this lost cat. Nagisa felt embarrassed about her brothers, thinking that the act of adopting a cat carried romantic implications. In reality, she didn't dare tell Kaju because keeping cats in their apartment complex was unacceptable. Meanwhile, Kaju was curious about where this cat came from. Kanon, a girl with pale white hair, suddenly appeared and introduced herself as someone who had been caring for that cat for a long time. She had been in the same class as Nagisa during the previous school year. Nagisa suddenly remembered the annual student council meeting, then quickly ran off to apologize to a friend she had misunderstood. On the way up a quiet hill, Kaju and Kanon continued their conversation. When asked about her background, Kanon revealed she carried mixed blood. Her father was a foreigner. Her childhood was associated with an abandoned monastery, where she grew up spending most of her time caring for homeless kittens. Although loving them dearly, she still carried the worry of not knowing whether she could stay with these small creatures forever. Therefore, Kanon always tried to find trustworthy people to adopt them one by one. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kaju approached Natsuki to grasp the situation related to the recent series of disappearances. Inside a glass isolation room, the fifth victim was found unconscious. That woman had lost an important part of her internal organs around the diaphragm and kidneys, signs indicating these were no longer ordinary attacks. Vatler appeared, issuing a warning that the soul of that woman possessed an unusual attraction, possibly having attracted a dangerous entity. All signs indicated everything was related to a mysterious girl who had appeared the previous night, coinciding with the time a battleship completely disappeared from the control zone. The military couldn't confront this creature, as its power far exceeded any human weapon system. Vatler clearly expressed a determined attitude, affirming that Kaju was not allowed to intervene in the case simply because he couldn't defeat that girl. If he persisted in getting involved, what awaited ahead was only a meaningless death. When Kanon handed the cat back to a student who lived near her former home, that little girl began sharing about the painful memories once tied to this place. Years ago, Kanon was a victim in a serious accident, and what made people shudder was that only she survived amid the ruins. After finishing the story, the little girl silently left, leaving Kanon with a small cat just found the last creature still by her side after everything. With a melancholic gaze, she decided to personally raise that cat as a way to continue an unclosed piece of memory. At that moment, Natsuki appeared, not hiding her seriousness when discovering animals in the school grounds, something forbidden by regulations. Nevertheless, she temporarily set aside the rules on the condition that Kaju must agree to accompany her that evening to perform a special mission. As agreed, Kaju showed up, this time accompanied by Yukina. Natsuki presented a series of unusual incidents, specifically the event 3 days ago, while emphasizing that within just 2 weeks, 5 similar incidents had occurred. Tonight's objective was to trace the whereabouts of those using false forms to cause trouble. As soon as the warning was issued, the suspect appeared. Natsuki immediately activated the attack signal, with flares exploding in the air to disorient hearing. In an instant, the entire group was teleported to the central combat zone. 2 strange entities were engaged in fierce confrontation, causing the ground to shake violently. Yukina drew her spear, preparing for battle, while Natsuki tried to seal both with magic. However, the opponent's power exceeded expectations, easily escaping the magical chains. The situation spinning out of control forced Natsuki to change direction. As the surrounding area began to crack, she deployed a new barrier to stabilize the structure, while calling forth Kenju with the 9th attribute to hold the enemy. Yet, before the counterattack could be launched, the opposing entity struck first. In that brief moment, a fatal blow was delivered, knocking off the mask of the one hit. The person who saved Kaju at that time was none other than Kanon, her eyes blazing, coldly taking action by instinct. The act of driving her nails into the enemy's eyes, then finishing like a wild beast, silenced the entire battlefield. Afterward, Kanon spread her wings, flying into the night, leaving countless unanswered questions. The remaining traces led Yukina and Kaju to an automation technology company where Kanon's foster father worked. However, at the main office, they received news that she wasn't present. Thanks to authority from the Lion King agency, Yukina was permitted to contact high-level officials. The institute director's personal secretary confirmed he was at an isolated research center offshore where Kanon was staying. After some exchanges, the female assistant directly escorted the two to the landing pad. During the flight, Yukina tried to stay calm, despite her fear of heights. In her mind, images of young Kanon appeared a child not adopted out of love, but to serve experimental purposes. That thought made Yukina inadvertently think about herself, about the difficult-to-name similarity between 2 fates. The trip took them to a remote island, with a research facility located in an unidentified zone. As soon as they set foot on land, the pilot had already left after a warning message. The feeling of isolation immediately appeared when they discovered this area was empty, without a single person, no communication signals. Yukina began manually marking the path as a precaution, while both fumbled through the war-torn terrain. The pressure from prolonged silence gradually eroded their spirits, making them doubt the ability to retreat if things went beyond control. Meanwhile, at an old chapel where Kanon once lived, Sayaka silently traced the remaining clues. She found many cat hairs, proving this place once had activities. While observing, Gaju suddenly appeared. The strange aura from him made Sayaka cautious. After some scrutiny, Gaju agreed to share confidential information related to the Kaz organization, on the condition of secrecy. Through the brief conversation, Sayaka discovered that the center of all recent chaos revolved around 2 special individuals, Kiriha and Kanon. At that time, Nagisa and Asagi came to the church to inquire about Kanon. Upon seeing Gaju, Asagi immediately recognized him as the person who had attacked her in the past, causing tension to quickly spread. The heated exchange caused the conflict to escalate, forcing Kaju to summon Kenju to prevent any terrible things from happening. However, the control of Kenju was still not completely stable, making the situation more chaotic. Outside, Yukina entered soaking wet, still holding her familiar spear. The reason was that Kaju had thought of a way to catch fish by creating electrical pulses in the water, a bold but impractical idea. Seeing this, Yukina silently prepared a simple dinner beforehand. Although called dinner, all the food was prepared from coconut, the only ingredient they found on the island. When Kaju drank coconut water, he suddenly recalled childhood memories, playing cooking with his sister Nagisa, and getting a stomachache from eating too much. At the same time, he also remembered his promise to Asagi, something he had been hesitant to fulfill. Meanwhile, Yukina silently observed the sunset scene on the beach, the sunlight dyeing the horizon red, creating a peaceful landscape amid chaotic days. Elsewhere, Asagi was tracking Kaju's traces through her personal supercomputer. After many searches, she discovered a photo capturing Kaju and Yukina boarding a mysterious flight heading toward 2 offshore islands. Based on flight data, the computer determined the coordinates of the destination and the takeoff time. Sayaka then dispatched a Coast Guard team deploying speedboats to approach the target area. Back on the island, the weather began to turn cold. The chill creeping through the canopy made the atmosphere even more eerie. Kaju couldn't find Yukina anywhere, so he followed the faint footprints on the sand, following the soft silver moonlight. Walking until reaching a lake where the moonlight reflected sparkles, he saw Kanon bathing. The unexpected scene caused Kanon to turn her head, her ice-cold eyes locking onto Kaju. In an instant, without warning, the stream of power emanating from her left Kaju no time to react, collapsing on the spot. Looking down at his hand, Kaju noticed a small streak of blood flowing from his nose. Surprised by his body's reaction, he quickly turned back toward the lake where he had just seen Kanon. But the scenery now only showed the still water surface with the moon's reflection. No trace indicated she had ever been there. Immediately, Yukina appeared behind him, her spear coldly touching Kaju's neck as a warning. Not allowing him to look back, she carefully observed the blood stain and directly asked who had caused him to react that way. Kaju affirmed that he saw a girl who looked very much like Kanon, though she appeared slightly older. Hearing this answer, Yukina sighed, sensing that Kaju wasn't joking, then silently borrowed the jacket he was wearing before they both continued their journey to track down that mysterious person. While fumbling through the trails leading to the beach, a strange sound echoed from afar, causing them to stop. Both looked out at the water ahead, where a ship was gradually approaching the island. Yukina glanced and recognized the strange symbol carved on the ship's hull, a sign showing this vessel didn't belong to ordinary civilian forces. It seemed to be searching for something, carefully scanning each section of shore before docking. As soon as the ship stopped, an armed squad disembarked, conducting a sweep. Kaju and Yukina immediately found hiding places among dense grass clusters. She quickly pulled him down, shielding their bodies from the opponent's sight. Upon closer observation, Yukina discovered that the group wasn't using rubber bullets as in training, but real ammunition. Clearly, this mission's target wasn't simple. With no other choice, Yukina sprang up, launching a direct attack. She fought tirelessly, facing 3 to 4 enemies simultaneously, while Kaju also exerted full force to resist. However, those soldiers weren't easily defeated. Although both fought seriously, the battle situation remained completely unfavorable. Just as the encirclement tightened, gunshots suddenly rang out from afar, simultaneously taking down the approaching group of soldiers. The shooter was none other than the girl Kaju had seen earlier by the lake, someone who resembled Kanon. She introduced herself as Fioria, admitting she had met Kaju before under different circumstances. Surprisingly, Fioria had just used the last bullet in her cursed gun to save his life. The boat she arrived on was actually remotely controlled by a mother ship. And now, the mechanized units on board continued deploying reinforcements to the ground. The opponent's ammunition proved ineffective against Fioria's power. In response, Kaju summoned the 5th level Kenju, unleashing a wide-range attack, sweeping away the soldiers and the newly docked ship. Meanwhile, in a secret area on a cargo ship, a strange ritual was taking place. An artificial angel was about to be recreated. When the mask was broken, Windmaster warned that if this entity were released, the consequences would be no different from a natural disaster. No one could control it when fully awakened, as its nature was originally created as a desperate weapon. The goal of the organization behind this was to use the artificial angel as a type of biological bomb. The only survivor who had contact with it was the daughter of a hematology research professor, who now imprisoned the 4th progenitor. That girl claimed to have captured Kaju, and now he and Yukina were being held at the Goldfish Bowl testing facility, a top-secret facility beyond the control of any international organization. At that time, someone appeared claiming to be a princess from a distant country Folia, but contrary to her noble status, she showed friendliness and closeness to both Kaju and Yukina. On the way to Itagami Island, she was ambushed by a strange group. Their objective was to seize Folia's body to extract royal bloodline, a rare magical source to perform an ancient magical ritual, something that could overturn the power balance if not stopped in time. In the chaotic context between supernatural forces with conspiracy to manipulate life, the secret about Kanon, an artificial angel, was gradually revealed. Her creator was none other than Kane's Kensho, who was her biological father. About 15 years ago, Kanon's grandfather had an extramarital relationship, and the consequence of that relationship was her birth. Ironically, this made Kanon, by blood, Yukina Himuragi's aunt, an unbelievable truth that shocked the entire Chaos Palace when her true identity was exposed. The appearance of the seemingly harmless young girl quickly became a serious threat. As soon as Kaju saw her, that entity transformed into a bizarre angelic form, a creature with white wings spread wide, emanating dense supernatural energy. Meanwhile, Folia Rihavine had realized that everything was orchestrated by Kensho. He had forced innocent people through artificial spiritual evolution rituals with the ambition to create a superior species, far beyond ordinary humans. As the situation became tense, another mysterious ship appeared on the ocean. When Layla Rihavine was about to counterattack, Yukina intervened timely, because on that ship was Kensho, the mastermind behind the entire plan. He admitted that Kanon wasn't just an experimental entity, but had also defeated 3 of the 7 main subjects of this project. 6 power crystals created by his own hands were all absorbed by her, making her a near holy entity, almost impossible to control. To continue upgrading Kanon's power, Kensho's group decided to release her to fight once more. When the glowing chest was opened, Kanon slowly awakened. Before her stood Yukina with Schneewalzer's spear in hand, determined not to back down. Despite launching a fatal strike, the spear tip couldn't penetrate the defensive layer surrounding that entity. Yukina was about to continue attacking when Sayaka Kurosaka suddenly appeared, using her Kenzoku weapon transformed into a spear to block the strike. Folia battled against a demon remaining from the project. Meanwhile, Kanon flew into the air, the light emitting from her wings making everything blindingly bright. Afterward, a light shell was thrown directly where Kaju stood, forcing him to summon the 5th and 9th Kenzoku for defense. Nevertheless, Professor La Folia frankly admitted that Kanon's power had reached a level beyond this world's category, something the Kenzoku could never destroy. Kaju was seriously attacked, while Yukina rushed to help him. Amid the chaos, the sea wind began to rise fiercely. A whirlwind appeared as Kanon had completely lost control. Professor La Folia and the others quickly fled to save their lives. Yukina still tried to call for Kaju, who was now being held in a protective shield by Fia Protect. At that time, Sarilyn used her bow and arrows to destroy all the robots attacking the distant ship. Natsuki Minamiya was also present, having come to gather evidence to corner the Robot Research Corporation. She revealed that Folia Rihavine was still alive and currently with her group on a secret island. The group planned to head there. However, when they saw an ice pillar suddenly rise in the middle of the sea, they immediately thought Kaju had caused something unpredictable again. Although Kanon Kanzaki showed no signs of consciousness, Yukina timely and carefully sealed her to prevent risks from instability in his body. Even though the external wounds had closed, in the middle of Kaju's chest still clearly showed a strange seal, indicating his condition hadn't been completely resolved. Ordinary healing methods didn't bring results, forcing them to consider another option: awakening one of the familiars capable of regenerating life force for its master. Frolacia, a vampire with deep understanding of familiar mechanisms, decided to try using blood to stimulate Kaju's recovery. Having heard this action was quite delicate, she asked Yukina to look away to avoid an awkward situation when her lips almost touched the unconscious person. However, Yukina couldn't let that girl do it alone. She immediately stepped forward, taking responsibility, cutting her own skin and using her blood to transfer to Kaju. In that moment, the bloodthirst within him gradually awakened. Power awakened, wounds quickly disappeared, and his body began to move again. After Kaju regained consciousness, Frolacia recounted everything from when he fainted until creating the ice pillar in his uncontrolled state. Kanon, who had awakened that chaos, fell into a prolonged unconscious state, forcing them to immediately plan her rescue. Although the revival was somewhat unusual, signs from the familiars within Kaju still showed no positive change. Frolacia decided to try again with more intimate contact, hoping to accelerate the reaction process. However, when her lips just lightly touched, Kaju turned away, keeping distance. Not giving up, Frolacia even sat on him to force contact in order to directly stimulate recovery ability. Meanwhile, Kanon sat alone in a cold corner, her face heavy with worry. Kaju came to her side, reassuring and promising to bring her back safely. However, no one knew that behind them, Professor Kensei Kanase was still silently observing the entire development. He was the one who had contributed to this chaotic situation by experimenting with bloodline on Kanon, an act that made Kaju even more furious when hearing Kensei reveal that Kanon's mother was his own sister. Instead of remorse, Kensei believed he was bringing an opportunity for Kanon to rise above humanity, something that made the situation even more concerning. Right in the middle of the tense exchange, another entity arrived, a girl wearing plastic armor, looking no different from a copy from a fantasy world. She not only struck first, but also brought 2 strange entities, which were copies unconsciously created by Kanon from the royal bloodline during her transformation. When the battle erupted, Sayaka Kurosaka unexpectedly intervened. Her strike caused the ice layer surrounding the area to show signs of cracking, opening the way for a new battle. With no escape, everyone was drawn into the chaos, where bloodlines, powers, and secrets were revealed bit by bit under the cold moonlight. After the solid ice layer was broken from within, Yukina quickly took action, deciding to confront the imposter entity in Kanon's form, while Kaju chose to approach and rescue the real young woman who had fallen into a chaotic state. While both sides engaged in fierce combat, Yukina clearly demonstrated remarkable progress. She no longer relied entirely on weapons, instead using her own hands to overwhelm the opponent. Sharp strikes combined with agility left the enemy unable to react in time, and finally was defeated in a completely helpless state. On the other side, Folia handled the hybrid beast with absolute precision. Her gun barrel carried not only power, but also full of skillful techniques. After defeating the target, the girl in Kanon's form became angry, hurriedly rushing toward La Folia, determined to retaliate. However, the royal princess wasn't easily overwhelmed. With just a decisive motion with her holy sword, she pushed back the oncoming attack. The light from the sword shone brilliantly, concentrating power from the royal bloodline, convincingly ending the enemy. At that time, the Kanon clones followed Yukina's command due to the influence from her control ability, no longer resisting. While everyone temporarily stabilized the situation, Kaju continued to face Kanon's true form, who had not yet fully recovered from her state of loss of control. He gently recalled childhood memories, when they had taken care of cats together, arousing a bit of emotion remaining in the mind of the girl who was bewildered by evil power. Nevertheless, Kanon's attack still came, despite the call from memory. At this point, a new card was used by Kaju, the third Kenju, a spirit beast in the form of a two-headed dragon serpent. As soon as it was summoned, this creature quickly enveloped the space with a terrifying aura. The battle between the lost angel and the ancient dragon erupted in a scene of violent chaos. When the strongest breakthrough attack was launched, the barrier surrounding Kanon was torn apart. Professor Kensei, who was secretly observing the entire event, was stunned by this sight, as he recognized the fearsome capability of the dragon. It could penetrate even space-time, something seemingly impossible before. When Kanon's power was broken, a wave of shock spread, creating a large explosion, causing the ground to shake. That girl's body began to change, new wings growing as a result of the violent transformation. Not letting the situation continue, Yukina timely threw the Shikigami spear with purifying properties, aiming directly at the center of chaos to disperse the divine influence weighing on Kanon. Under the effect of that ritual, the power not belonging to humans gradually dispersed, helping the young girl regain her composure. In the decisive moment, Kaju allowed the dragon to absorb all remaining energy from Kanon, protecting her by sealing them in a different dimension. After ensuring safety, he headed straight toward the professor without choosing destruction, keeping his promise that things wouldn't end in bloodshed. Further away, two guardians Natsuki and Saravati arrived just in time, assisting in cleaning up the scene and escorting everyone away from the danger zone. Kanon later woke up from a long nightmare-filled sleep. Opening her eyes, she saw everyone still by her side, and La Folia gently affirmed that it was the group's unity that had brought her out of that terrifying dream vortex.